Hello everyone, welcome in. My name is Everetta, and this lively pile of bones next to me is my bestie Maury. And we're sharing some hunt lore today. With the end of the Tide Trilogy approaching, I know there's still a lot of people that either still haven't gotten around to listening or reading the full chapters, don't intend to listen to all of them, or did but don't fully understand what's happening in the story. So in this video, I'll be summarizing the 15 chapters of the Tide of Shadows story into a shorter and more simplified version to get you started on catching up. This will be part 1, and then I'll put out parts 2 and 3 for the Tide of Corruption and the Tide of Desolation. A couple more quick things to note before we get started. The Tide of Shadows summary, I decided to retell what takes place in chronological order rather than the order that the game gives you the chapters. I kept hearing people being confused about what's going on in the story because the original order of the chapters goes back and forth between 1893 and 1895. So I'm hoping changing the order will make it a bit clearer for people. The flip side to that is by doing it this way, it essentially puts the end of the story more towards the beginning. I don't think anyone clicking on this video is worried about spoilers at this point, but I just wanted to put that out there just in case. Also, if you're someone that really wanted to listen to the chapters, but are assuming you missed your chance now that the event is over, there are several people that have uploaded the full chapters to YouTube. The voice acting is amazing, and I highly recommend listening to them if you haven't already. I'll put some links in the description. Okay, now that all of that is out of the way, let's dive in. The Tide of Shadows story begins in 1893 aboard a ship named the Delphine. The events that take place are documented in the ship's log by an individual referred to as the Navigator. In the beginning of the ship's journey, the conditions are described as almost hurricane type of weather, causing multiple disasters to take place, including an incident where a circus tent gets blown into the river, with people still trapped inside of it. The people become tangled up in the fabric of the tent, unable to escape, and the ship is unable to redirect in time before colliding with the people and getting them caught in the ship's paddle wheel, causing a bloody scene that the crew rushed to clean up before any of the passengers saw what had happened. After this incident, the Navigator points out that if the ship wasn't cursed before, it is now. Meanwhile, there's notes of more and more insects in and around the ship that seem to be increasing in size. The Navigator also mentions that he's learned they're transporting something strange, stored in the ship's stowage. Some of the crew members report hearing whispers coming from the crate the item is stored in, but at this point, it isn't clear what the item is. With the winds unrelenting and the bugs increasing in numbers and size, the Navigator writes about a kind of lightning he'd never seen before. It struck the side of the boat, and the sound of a gong rang out from the cargo hold. The lightning seemed to frighten the captain so badly that with his whiskey in hand, he jumped overboard, abandoning his ship. After this incident, the ship and the crew became lost. Nothing looked familiar to the Navigator. Their compass appeared to be blank with no markings to indicate direction. The sun stopped rising, the moon barely moved, there wasn't a need to eat or drink. It seemed time had stopped for the Delphine and the people on board. As the passengers began going crazy, one crew member said they could hear voices coming from the strange item they were transporting, claiming it to be the Ark of the Covenant. Another crew member stated something was stalking the boat and wanted it shot. This is when the Navigator learns the ship is transporting guns and stolen goods, along with the mysterious item, which was some kind of insectile head artifact. Eventually, the crew started shooting at the massive insects, some the size of sea turtles. And this seemed to awaken something in the water that began to ram and tear at the ship with its jaws. A crew member caught one of the beetles in the water, and upon pulling it onto the ship, was attacked by the beast stalking them, biting his arms off. Before rotting away, the crew member uttered one final word: Rotjaw. The Navigator notes seeing a young girl on the banks that appeared to be watching them and moving her arms as if she might be controlling this Rotjaw attacking them. After being attacked by Rotjaw several more times, a strange man on a rowboat approached the Delphine. He explained that the relic they were transporting was special and powerful, and that it showed man how to make the very first fire, and that if they put it in the mouth of the alligator attacking them, they'd all go home, tapping the deck of the ship with his cane when he said, home. This leads to one of the crew members crafting an electric contraption to put around Rotjaw, and this is when the Navigator starts to lose his mind. He writes about wanting to stop the crew from fulfilling the instructions of the man in the rowboat, explaining his love for the ship, that they're married. He wants to stay with her and have children together. However, the crew was able to lure Rotjaw to them and capture her. They put the cage around her and activated the relic. The navigator locked himself in the boiler and continued to write in the log as parts of his body slowly turned to ash and steam to give to the Delphine so that she could continue to sail. He described the process as a special kind of decay, blooming as his limbs became ash, declared that he would become 100 altars to her, turn souls into deckhands, mates, and chambermaids for her, and that he would always be her shadow on the tide. The rest of the story takes place during the game's present day of 1895, starting with a tale from the Cardinal Rain. She speaks of the rain that's arrived as having a sickness and being foul, while watching strange worshippers collect driftwood and debris from a shipwreck. The people, treating the debris as sacred, used it to build altars. Cardinal Rain takes advantage of these altars to gain the power of shadow, which allows her to move through the bayou undetected by the corrupted creatures plaguing the area, like the hives and armoreds. With this power, she begins to hunt for Rotjaw to end the rot and bloom the beast has brought to this land. While Cardinal Rain is on the hunt to find Rotjaw, a woman named Gar has already been catching glimpses of the alligator. However, unlike Cardinal Rain, who wants to eliminate Rotjaw, Gar wants to worship her. Unfortunately for Gar, Cardinal Rain isn't the only one on the hunt for Rotjaw. The reptilian and his followers, the scaled ward and the hornback, are also tracking her alligator idol down. The first group to have actual contact with Rotjaw, though, are the smugglers. The wayward helmsman recounts the experience in his landlog, describing the carnage of one of the crewmates being crushed in her jaws, another being accidentally shot by their captain, and a third being electrocuted by a blue-green lightning the gator shot out to break free from her cage. But then suddenly, something stopped all of the chaos. The arrival of a ghost ship coming through the fog. Rotjaw ends her attack on the smugglers and sets her sights on the ship, following it downstream. And the wayward helmsman asks his captain how they can get treasure from this ghost ship. Continuing her search, Gar comes across the cage Rotjaw broke out of, floating in the water with 2 hunters inside, covered in beetles. As Gar inspects and tries to make sense of the contraption, she sees it's covered in blood from the alligator. She tastes it and describes feeling the rot melt and mold and multiply as she concludes, Rotjaw is healed by the wounds of others. So she spears a catfish and touches it to one of the bloody cage spikes, causing lightning to spark through its gills. Then suddenly, Gar senses something new. Rotjaw has given her the gift of instinct, allowing her to see flecks of orange in her dark sight, letting her know someone is nearby. She hears whoever it is move their cane through the water. She picks up a railroad hammer from one of the dead hunters and gracefully moves through the stalks after them before landing a blow. Meanwhile, the wayward helmsman is set with a task from the captain to see if the ghost ship, the Delphine, has blessed them, while the captain leaves to talk to a man named Finch. With the help from the gunrunner and the deckhand, they tie the rat to a tree in the middle of the river and take turns shooting her. To their surprise, the water began to boil around her, closing her wounds and healing her. They then shot her restraints, letting her loose, and in retaliation, she plunged her bayonet into the deckhand's ribs and then into the gunrunner's neck before stabbing the helmsman in his armpit. They got into the stream and were healed by the water, just as the rat was. It would seem the Delphine had indeed blessed them with the gift of Mariner. Still searching for Rotjaw, Cardinal Rain is met by a group of hunters known as the Wolf Pack. Side note, the story doesn't specifically say who is in the wolf pack, but based on individual character lore, we can assume it's Direwolf, Luna Wolf. The pack has brought an injured man to her, who is in rough shape after being hit with a heavy hammer. The man offers to tell her about the alligator in exchange for being healed. She agrees, and the wolf pack hands her a trait totem. Gripping the totem, she channels restoration from it, healing the pack and the man they brought to her. Cardinal Rain asks the man if he's Mr. Sherry, and he confirms as he stands up, using a stick for a cane. She asks him how Rotjaw has come here, and he answers that a selfish man traveled to the land of the dead to bring something back, and used Rotjaw to do it. He then tells her that the man was Finch, and that he knows where Finch and Rotjaw will be at sunrise. When the sun rises, Cardinal Rain is granted her epic fight with Rotjaw. They wrestle across the bottom of the river as the gator pulls her along rocks, pieces of wood, and glass, injuring both of them in the process. At one point, Cardinal Rain spots an item in the mouth of Rotjaw. She describes it as something not from this land. It appears to be some kind of insect head and whispers in an unknown language. Rotjaw makes a final attempt at biting Cardinal Rain, but she dodges, and the gator sinks deeper into the water with the remains of the ship. Cardinal Rain now feels that she knows what has fouled the rain that they've received. However, the battle here isn't over. Injured and dying, Rotjaw calls out to Gar, bringing Gar to her, but also alerting many other hunters in the process. The smugglers take perch in a watchtower. The primal pact of the reptilian and his kin sneak up. The grounded hunters hide along the trees. Killian Gravel, also known as the Skinned, fires at Gar, narrowly missing and hitting the tree behind her. Another hunter throws a firebomb at the watchtower. The grounded lure grunts and hives into the area to add to the chaos. Bullets spray into a pack of water devils from the reptilian's optimat. Gar sets a concertina trap that the hornback runs into. Then, Gar is able to slip quietly behind the Skinned and thrust her bomb lance into his back, piercing through his ribs and into his lungs. But she's also hit by bullets, knives, and arrows in the process. Dying, Gar pushes through to Rotjaw, letting her own blood pour into the mouth of the gator. She banishes her in a desperate attempt to heal herself while ending Rotjaw's pain, and hoping that Rotjaw will find her way back to her. The helmsman wrote of the aftermath in his land log, describing how the ghost ship in the sky broke apart once Rotjaw was banished, causing pieces of ship, its cargo, and debris to rain down from the sky. Guns and treasure now littered the area. The helmsman picked up one of the guns that he said had a double-barreled rifle with a shotgun underneath, which we all know now to be the drilling. However, despite all the treasure and chaos around him, the captain ignored it as he sifted through what remained of Rotjaw, looking for something else. As the helmsman pulled the captain out of the pool of gator rot, the worshippers that the Cardinal Rain described earlier arrived to collect the ship debris. They constructed another altar from the pieces of the Delphine. The rat went to stop them from doing so by preparing a stick of dynamite, but the helmsman shot her before she could throw it. Injured and barely alive, the worshippers pulled the rat to the altar. They performed a ritual that turned her soul inside out and then was absorbed. The helmsman wrote that it looked like a cloud and smelled like the rain, and that maybe that's what the foul rain is made of. His final note was about seeing something gold in the water, and he waited to see if it would float. But that's all he says, so we don't get any confirmation in this part of the story as to what it was he saw. And that's everything summed up from the main storyline for the Tide of Shadows, for the first part in the trilogy. There are more pieces of lore from character and weapon skins, as well as an entry in the monster book for Rotjaw, but I think I'll go over those in another video. For me, the main point of interest in this story is obviously the relic. What can it be used for? Why does Sherry want it in the first place? And why did he lie about it being Finch that brought the relic back when it was clearly Mr. Sherry? I guess we'll have to look for those answers in the chapters for the Tide of Corruption and Tide of Desolation. But tell me what your thoughts are. What do you think the relic will be used for? What are your overall thoughts on the Tide of Shadows story? And what other lore would you like me to make a video on? Let me know in the comments. My goal is to start regularly uploading lore content, so keep an eye out for my next video. And in the meantime, feel free to check out my Twitch channel, where I exclusively stream hunt matches every Friday and Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific. Sometimes I play on teams, but I also do a lot of solo versus trios and regularly do hunt DLC giveaways live on stream. So if that sounds interesting to you, come say hi. Anyways, thanks for watching, and may all your matches be single bounty daytime Lawson. Bye.